to this regularly scheduled Shelburne Selectboard meeting of January 22nd, 2019, which I call to order. The next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion?
No.
To approve?
Jamie moves.
Second?
Linda seconds.
Mary. But I'm flattered.
And I'm here. I'm sitting right here, too.
Looking at me.
Remember.
Well, you could. I guess we could mistake that some night. You know, who would know? Mary seconds. Any further discussion? Any discussion in the public? Hearing none, seeing no hands. Those approving, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed, nay. Josh votes aye, and Colleen is not voting for reason of not yet being present. The next item is public comments, the first of which, as is our routine, will be Ruth's regarding the new library town center project.
Hello.
So we had some snow. Most of it stayed outside the building because they did get most of it enclosed. I think the wind blew really hard, so some came in the plastic. But they were clearing that out, and they're back to work. It's hard to know what to say when they're doing this kind of, very, very laborious plumbing and electricity. We have had a lot of meetings about electricity because it turns out that you have to go back and approve 3 times how many plugs you're going to put in where, which is good because we don't want to have it later be, oh, why didn't we put a plug in here? So we've been doing that, and we've been working some on our getting solar packages together to bring to you in a couple weeks. So that's where we are.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Ruth. We certainly all sympathize with them up on that roof. Any questions? Sarah, please.
I just wanted to, Sarah Tompkins Falls Road, and I just wanted to commend the road crew for doing a fantastic job. Because of them, some of us are able to get to work, and we don't have the option of snow days, so I really appreciate them getting out there and really being persistent about keeping the roads cleaned.
Thank you, Sarah, and I'm sure they appreciate that. Anyone else? Any other?
Can I use this one?
Sure.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Brown. I'm here with my husband Doug. We live at 79 Bayfield Drive, and we just wanted to put in a formal complaint. There has been a complaint put in already by Terry Knaw, who is the Vermont section of the International Dark Sky Association. But I've used him the first time Tractor Supply was built, and their lighting, we're directly behind them, and their lighting shined off of the parking lot right into our properties. And they put shades on those lights, and it helped somewhat. Well, they've changed the bulbs to be extremely bright and don't have shades on them. So Terry had gone and looked at them and talked to the manager there, and he said that they were in apparent violation of the Shelburne zoning bylaw relative to outdoor fixtures, and that they're not fully shielded and throw light across the nearby property lines. And I'll tell you, it looks like a landing strip back there. I mean, I can't even keep my blinds open at night. It's just so bright. So I wanted to put the complaint. He sent an email to Ravi the first time, and that was on December 6th, and he hasn't heard back anything from anybody. So that's why I wanted to come and give the formal complaint for it.
Thank you. I'm sure the town manager is going to respond to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just by way of an update, Ravi came to see me the other day and informed me that he has been working with Tractor Supply and made them very aware of their need to come in for some sort of amendment and take care of the lighting issue that you have raised. So.
Is there a time frame put on that? Because they're kind of notorious for not responding or not doing anything.
When I spoke with Ravi last week, he indicated that he had given them 2 weeks to work to rectify this, so you may want to check with him tomorrow and find out precisely when that may be. But he did inform me that wanted to let me know this was an issue and that he is working with them on that.
Okay.
Understand the concern.
Thanks, Lee. Any further comment, discussion? Hearing none. The next item is Select Board comments. I'd like to make a few to start. We're remembering that this Saturday from 2 to 4 here, we have a reception for the town manager. As well, I note the rescue squad has an open house for the several hours before that. So if you want to make a good part of a day of it, go to the rescue squad and then come here. We too are extremely appreciative and can't be thankful enough for the work that's been done over the weekend of the storm, and appreciate your comments, Sarah, which I'm sure virtually all of us, would second. I have a very brief comment, and that's to the effect that the I-Forward Award, which was scheduled as a prize to be announced tonight, has been delayed for reasons of the fact that most of the jury couldn't make it because of the storm. Josh, do you have any comment?
No, I don't.
Mary?
I just want to say in advance that I apologize that I won't be able to make this weekend's celebration of our new town manager or the open house at the rescue, because I will be out of town, but my absence should not be taken to mean lack of interest or appreciation for either. I too want to comment on the state of the roads. It was great, and I can say that I got stuck in a snowbank, and lo and behold, a plow truck came around the corner, and the plow guy hopped out, pushed me out, and went on his way as if it was part of his job. It was really quite remarkable, and of course, I'm very appreciative of that. So, hashtag love living in Shelburne.
Thank you. Colleen has joined us on the phone. Do you have any, Jamie? Any? No comment. No. Any discussion? Thank you. I move forward past the Select Board meeting minutes of 1:15 to allow the participation of Colleen, who now has joined us, and therefore I'd like to go back to that.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, Colleen.
Can you hear us?
Oh, no.
No. Meanwhile, let's proceed on that. Lee has provided us a copy of the minutes. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of the Select Board meeting on January 15, 2019. I have no changes.
Second.
Mary moves, Jamie seconds. Any discussion? Josh?
No.
Any other further comment? Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those
Aye.
opposed, nay. Josh voting aye. Thank you. The next item is the town manager report.
Well, others have certainly echoed praises for the highway crew. I'd also just like to mention folks like dispatch, PD, first responders who had to come in during the storm. Also, it's serving in the background to help with everything. So it was a yeoman effort all around by all involved.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Any other comments?
Thank you.
Next item is the school resource officer contract, final draft and authorization to sign.
I had thought we had a final draft, and then there are more late-breaking changes, so we'll bring this back another meeting.
Okay. Next item is the Emerald Ash Borer grant application to the state. I see members of the committee present. Do you want to speak to it, or should you want to let Lee introduce it? Let folks
Do you
know
have
who
the
you are.
paperwork?
Let folks know who you are, David.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dave Hall, Shelburne Tree Warden, and Tree Committee. Do you have the paperwork? I thought Gail was going to be here with it.
Well, I can give the 20-second overview unless someone else wants to.
This is the Emerald Ash Borer grant, right?
Yes.
Okay, it's been a long couple of days.
Dave's been in the sidewalk plow too, so.
Yeah, and my truck, and yeah. So we're applying for a grant of, I'm not sure what the exact dollar came up to,
$2,000.
2,000, which will be matched with town funds and volunteer labor to help plan for the emerald ash borer issues. We want to try and, instead of trying to complete the entire tree inventory, we want to really inventory what we have in the roadsides and in the parks of ash specifically. And if we are well doing that, can do some other inventorying, great, but that should help us plan for whatever Holocaust is coming when we do find emerald ash in town. And we're basically, we can get access to software through the state to continue the inventory. We're looking to purchase two iPads and other gear that will enable us just to have them on hand, and when labor is available, we can go out and inventory instead of having to schedule borrowing them for a finite period of time and then trying to find the labor to do it. And we'd also like, did we put in planting into the grant? I haven't seen the final pay. Also planning on where we have a lot of ash, let's plant some new small trees to take their place so that when we do lose the ash, we still have foliage.
Thanks, Dave. Hope, you want to comment?
All right, yeah, so it's Hope Johnson, Shelburne Tree Advisory Committee. Thank you, Dave, for doing that. Normally, Gail would be here with the copy of the grant application and the details. Yeah, so the inventory is really important, and the reason we want these iPads is that it helps us to access the state system through GPS. So when we go out to do our inventory, we're actually in real time being located where the trees are on a map. And so it's a great way to get this data together. It's very accurate, it's very efficient. And like David said, if we can't really keep borrowing equipment and we only have a limited amount of time, our committee actually did, I think all members of our committee did the inventory in 2017. The inventory in 2014 was the larger inventory, which was done by I think it was students from UVM and the Vermont Community and Urban Forestry Program. So we're trying to expand this inventory, but the important thing is by having that technology, we'll also have, the town has access to data on the condition of the trees, what the trees are, of course, the species, and it's a great way for us to access that information, especially with the emerald ash borer. This is a really big deal. They're inevitably going to die. This is going to happen. And so it's important that we take the steps now to do our inventory, because we actually have a little bit of time, right, David? I mean, I think the spread of emerald ash borer is something like, was it 5 miles every 2 years?
Yeah, well, it's about, natural flight is 1 to 2 miles a year.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, humans spread it faster.
With firewood, yeah.
So
Firewood.
Grand Isle is the closest confirmed infestation at this point, but
Right.
that can change at any time, and
Right.
I would anticipate as spring comes and trees don't leaf out, that people start looking closer into why. And we, that's probably when we're going to have the next round of confirmed. Yes, thank you.
Right, and it could already be there. We don't know, but we do notice that on our inventory, the condition of the ash trees was fair to poor when we were surveying the trees that we did look at.
What were we at? Like 17% of what we surveyed were at?
I think it's about 12. 12%
okay.
was white and green ash. So, of course, there's also, of course, the safety issue. We've talked about this with you folks before, that this is important because once these trees die, they're more dangerous to remove. So we have to be, this is sort of us being proactive within this time frame of the spread of this pest, and getting the inventory down is a great way to have our facts David could establish priorities of which trees need to be addressed right away, especially if they're in parks or in rights of way where people are, cars and vehicles, whatever, they're a danger. So really that's the main reason for the grant. And this is a grant through the Vermont Community and Urban Tree Forestry Program that's specifically for EAB, addressing EAB issues.
Are we still moving forward with the immunization? I may have the terminology
The
wrong.
inoculation, yeah.
Inoculation.
It
That's
depends.
why we want a survey.
Yeah.
That's why we want to finish inventorying and also give us what is worth inoculating when the time comes.
Okay. You
You
say
know,
they're
it's
all
worth-
going to die. Are we still
Even- yeah, but-
somewhat optimistic that may be?
Some may survive, and they're actually saying to not be too drastic with removal, because if some do survive, they may have a natural resistance.
Right.
And so they want to know about that and study those and maybe even use
Breed 'em.
that for cultivars. So, so really, we're looking to get permission to apply for the grant from you.
Josh, do you have any comment?
I'm sorry.
Poor guy.
No, I think it's a really important thing to do. I think no matter what happens in the future, and this is all going to affect a lot of our resources, but getting a good feel for what we have now is really the right way to go.
Okay, Lee, any?
No, just that the Urban and Community Forestry Program has supported Shelburne's actions a number of times. They understand we have a very active committee that really cares about these things. And what some communities have done, which I'm sure will be part of this inventory, is identifying there may be some key trees we'd really like to hope to hang on to, and that's where the inoculation could play in, and the inventory can help identify those.
Can we, thanks, Dave, thanks, Hope.
You're welcome.
Can we?
Thank you.
Provide a brief, general motion to this effect,
I
or
actually have
do
some
we need it?
questions, if you don't
Sorry?
mind. I have some questions, if you don't mind.
Sorry.
And maybe Lee can answer it. As I understand it, you're going to apply for a grant. 2,000 will come in, but the town has to come up with 1,000, and then you're going to have $1,000 worth of volunteer hours. Do I
Correct.
have that right? And I'm having trouble finding the budget for the tree advisory committee on my
We have
budget.
trouble finding the budget too. I gotta tell you.
We'd
it's
like it to
all
be
over the
better
place.
defined.
It's in a,
I'm not the budget person. I mean, Gail's the one who's got the.
Tree conservation is the
Yeah.
line item?
Yeah.
yes,
Okay, can someone
a
point me to
nine-
that? I know
It's
we,
nine, right?
it's a $9,000 line item.
yeah, do we know where that is? Or is
On
it
the
just?
last page,
Very-
it's odd. It's like a
very end.
miscellaneous.
We should get moved up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In
Want to join that six-figure league?
Found it, found it. So do,
I think it's on the last page of the
It
budget
is.
from memory.
yeah, and it's line 26, tree conservation, $9,000. So is this 1,000 in addition to the 9? Or
No.
it comes out?
From the 9.
All right, thank you. I needed to know. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Sorry,
it.
Mary.
That's okay.
Colleen, any questions?
No, I haven't come in the middle of this agenda item. I'm just following along at this point.
Okay, any further discussion? Any discussion? Again, thank you, Hope, thank you, David.
You're welcome.
And
Thank you.
Lee?
So, a simple motion to authorize the application would be,
As presented.
So moved.
So moved by Mary,
Second.
seconded by Jamie. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that,
Aye.
those ayes include Jamie and Colleen, and we thank you
Josh.
again.
Josh and Colleen, for the record.
Was that unanimous?
Yes. I thought I said Josh and Colleen, but perhaps I didn't.
Do we need to do a roll call when we have,
You only have to do roll call if it's not
If
unanimous.
it's not unanimous.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, all set, gang? Next item is the public hearing, the first of two on the proposed town plan as approved by the Planning Commission and which has been subject to a number of information meetings before us. Do you want to introduce this or have
sure,
Jason?
thanks. So we have Chair of the Planning Commission, Jason, and Dean Pierce, Director of Planning, are both here this evening. As you mentioned, we've had several informal conversations about the town plan as a prelude to this. Statute requires that the Select Board in towns of our population hold 2 formally warned public hearings. We've warned both of those. This is the first of the 2, so be helpful for the record if we officially opened the hearing and then see where we go with it.
All right, is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Jamie moves,
Second?
Mary seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous in both Josh and Colleen voting for.
So good to go?
Hi, Jason.
Hi.
Welcome.
How you doing?
Welcome.
So some of you may have seen parts of this before. The idea is just to do a quick rundown on what the plan is and then a brief highlight of each section. There are, and we'll skip over a bunch of them, but there are about 20 slides in here for perspective. So the general background is that, as we know, the plan is a roadmap blueprint. There are state laws that indicate what needs to go in a plan if you have one. Towns aren't required to have them. There are some optional requirements, which we did leverage in the energy section, for example, that gives the towns substantial deference in the case of certain hearings because we included certain information. And the Planning Commission has been working on this for about the last 2 years. So now we're in the adoption process. The current plan has a policy volume and a large information volume plus maps. It's somewhat unwieldy. It's been around since 2014, and it's going to expire in February, which is why we've been working on this updated plan. Also of note is previously plans needed to be updated every 5 years. They've switched it to every 8 years. So these next few slides just basically give a history. So starting in February of 2017 is when we started figuring out how we were going to address it. And then, I don't know if you just want to flip through the next few slides. Over the couple of years, we addressed each section, went back to sections, just went through the whole process of coming up with this document, which ultimately resulted in November. The Planning Commission had their hearings and then submitted this current draft for Select Board hearing process. The main changes are, there was a big graphic redesign. Thank you again to the Select Board for approving that, because that made a huge difference, especially having to look at it regularly. So there is that. There's a single volume plus a map book that also has some data in it. There's a general emphasis on the concept of placemaking, and there is a bigger emphasis on conservation in the future land use maps. Also, there's a heavy section on natural resources, and there are emphasis on stormwater throughout. That's just something that's been incorporated. The general intent is to set forth a vision, and then basically each section sets forth policies. It's organized with each section will have one or more goals, objectives that support that goal, and then recommended actions to support those objectives. That's the general format by section. That third bullet shows some of the areas that it's written to direct towards. Those are just some examples. And the implementation of the plan will be just part of the regulatory process, the Planning Commission working on updating bylaws and that sort of thing. We consult the plan to make sure we're working within the rules that had been defined. So the overall vision, I don't think I need to read these bullets. These are snippets from it, but basically the idea is that Shelburne is part of the greater Burlington-Chittenden County area. And we do have this concept of a strong village center, and then it radiates out from there into our growth area 1, growth area 2, and the rural area. And there is a general idea to balance diverse interests and really have this pride of place. So that's something that I hope is seen throughout the document. So getting into each of the sections, the future land use not a big fan of reading slides, but the general, the goal around future land use is really focused on this placemaking concept. And the plan itself is broken down, this particular section, into the core village area, growth area 1, growth area 2, and rural, because each have their own nuances. And there are some objectives there noted just as examples. Natural resources is a healthy section. It's got a pretty significant goal in terms of identifying, conserving, and managing our natural and scenic resources. There are lots of concepts that are discussed within that section that are all in line with conversations we've been having as a town, and that the Planning Commission has encountered for a while, and the Natural Resources Committee has been working with for a very long time. Historic and cultural resource goals, like to preserve as much as possible, and there's some good background and good ideas in that section. Yeah. Growth and development. There has been some discussion around this. The goal is basically just to grow in a manner that is sustainable, and making sure that we have the infrastructure services to support the growth as it happens. There's a big stress on that. There was some discussion during the summary around the anticipated growth rate of the 25 to 50 new dwellings per year. And in the plan, and there was a lot of discussion around this and deliberation, it does explicitly state that that's more of a guideline based on historical, and that number can be updated as necessary. That was just mostly we needed something to have in there. The Parks and Rec, obviously great services that the town offer. We want to keep that going. There's some good new ideas in there as well. And then housing, there are two. I don't recall what was in the last plan, but there are objectives to meet state goals for having 10% housing be affordable and 10% be for workforce, and we have objectives to fulfill that as well. Childcare, it's a very important thing. The Planning Commission had worked with some childcare issues in the previous 3 years, and we're looking at continuing that and making sure that those services are available. Transportation's another fairly large section, and the general idea is to make sure that, well, the thing that was wrestled with and really tried to address is that previous plans were very car-centric around transportation. Like, that was just how the town has grown and what we tend to look through. And a lot of our conversations that led to this section had more to do with focusing on a more multimodal thing, so there are paths for pedestrians and bikes and other ways of getting around, including working with public transportation options. Energy is in two sections, one that revolves around conservation. That's what the first goal and objective go for. The second goal and objective are around generation. This has to do with some state initiatives that we put in here in order to obtain substantial deference in certain scenarios. And that just needs to show that we've put the time into saying, here's what we're going to do towards conservation, here's what we can do towards generation. And there are certainly future discussions to have around those things, but this provides a framework. Towers and telecommunications, not a huge section, but one that's kind of in there to give us a bit more deference. We have a policy on towers and telecommunications, so this reference in the plan is a reference to that, so that we have some consistency and some ground to stand on if we need to. So that's it in a real nutshell. So
You just did 2 years
Go.
in about 5-6
Right?
minutes, so kudos.
Nicely done.
sure. And if that monotone wasn't enough,
country
then
tour in 1 week.
right, yeah. So if everyone's still awake, I don't know.
A lot to take in
how do
there.
you want
You want to?
No, great presentation, first of all, thank you, and to the entire commission. We talked a little bit, we had some preview sessions, as you know, and you attended, but for the public's benefit. We were starting to get our heads around just, what are the key changes, right, directionally, because people are comfortable with the current plan. Maybe they don't love it, maybe they don't hate it, but
Right.
it's worked, right? So we were trying to identify at some level, and I thought we did a pretty good job as a board of just doing our own review and trying to highlight that for the public's benefit. So, I know if you had to think about just sort of top 3 changes, I know you invested a lot of time and energy. That's one section that I think is very eye-opening and is just a really sort of substantial change from the current plan. But just for the public, when you think about top 3 changes, what comes to mind?
I kind of relate it to time spent on sections, and we put a lot of time into land use and natural resources and transportation. And a lot of that, I don't know, aside from the quick summary changes, the format's obviously the big thing.
Yeah.
And even for members on the commission, the plan is a lot to take in. I know when I joined the board, I spent a day or two just reading it and getting familiar with it, but it wasn't something that was just regularly, it was regularly referenced, but not in a way that we could really, that people would want to interact with it. So I think the biggest change is the format, the layout, and the way you can reference it now. So that's huge. The content itself has changed, but it's been more, from my perspective, nothing really earth-shattering. I think it's been more to formulate the ideas that were in the previous plan with discussions that we've been having to just bring it to a more modern plan and prepare us for things down the line to create that framework. So the idea of that sense of place and those types of concepts. Within transportation, it was a really big thing just around paths and the idea in terms of, there are a lot of concepts that get tied together, like in terms of how growth happens within land use, how development is applied, and how transportation plays a role with all of that. And the idea, some ideas that had come up in discussion were that if you look at greater trends, that people are more looking for housing that is in an area where they can get to the local amenities easily and don't have to drive. And that's not so much the way the rural part of town works. So focusing on developing in the growth area where we already have infrastructure and making sure that infrastructure can keep up is a big focus that you see throughout. And then also how these things get connected is a big theme. And then keeping an eye on, I don't want to leave out natural resources, because keeping an eye on wildlife corridors and making sure that we're in line with all of those considerations.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think the commission did a wonderful job sort of tying it all together, thematically, as opposed to the current plan, which does read section by section in isolation. So the themes that you've already highlighted, whether it's placemaking, whether it's stormwater, whether it's land conservation, it does resonate very well. So thank you.
Good. Well, I thank the commission and everybody, Dean and Natural Resources Committee and everybody else that put time into it.
The other point I wanted to raise that you didn't, because you're very humble, is that there have been a lot of public input sessions already with the Planning Commission. So they've had an opportunity to, speak to residents and other stakeholders who have weighed in at this point on the draft that came to us. So it's been refined and fine-tuned.
Yeah, and there has been a lot of that interaction. There wasn't as big a response as I was thinking there might have been initially, but at the same time, part of me viewed that as a testament to, well, there was a lot of deliberation that went into these topics and anything. I think that the Planning Commission itself and the other members of other commissions that came in and contributed as well, there was definitely a lot of good discussion. And while I will say that the Planning Commission does tend to enjoy more unanimous decisions than not, there was a lot of good deliberation that went into a lot of those discussions. So I do feel like we covered a lot of topics well.
Yeah, no, and I think that personally makes me feel good. I'm sure my fellow board members as well. There was a lot of collaboration going into this between committees, whether it was natural resources, whether it was the housing subcommittee, the energy subcommittee. So it's just the process worked very well. in my opinion. So, again, kudos to the entire board and commission and everybody who's been involved with it to date. So,
And I will say, and also just to have it on record, that we discussed doing periodic minor updates each year, like taking a new section each year, so that at the end of 8 years, it's not this, you got to have a 2-year process, because that was a lot.
A lot of work.
Thank you. Mary?
This, well done. I really appreciate it. I would, for me, a benefit of the new town plan is increased desire to work on energy issues in the town. And not now, but some reasonable point in the future, I'd like to talk about having an energy committee, a group of folks, maybe after the library's done. I'm already thinking of people I might want to recruit, but to work on energy issues in the town when we're not all with so many big projects going on. I think it'd be really great to reduce that bill. It's $250,000 a year.
Absolutely. And to that end,
working on that.
we did create an energy subcommittee to help with the energy section, because there is a lot of knowledgeable talent in
Okay.
town. And even though that charter was created for the town plan activities, there was certainly interest from people. So that is
Let's
something
do
that
it.
we'd certainly
do
be
it.
behind as well.
Thank you. Great.
Josh, any comments?
Apparently not.
Apparently not. Colleen? No.
No, thank you very much to the Planning Commission and to any and all citizens that contributed.
He's presented an overview, Colleen, by slide, which tracks the,
Wow, that's a
yeah, I know that. It might help just to clue you in just very briefly, which tracks the process of the development of the plan, as well as he stepped us through the sectors, all of which we spent time with individually and collectively talked about. So that's what's been presented visually.
Got it.
Any discussion, any reaction, comment in the public? Gail?
I just want to say thank you to the Planning Commission for their openness in building collaboration among a much larger population than the 5 people who sit on the committee. I think they did a great job, and particularly for natural resources, we're grateful for having had that input.
Of course, Gail is speaking as chair of the Natural Resource Committee, who've been a pretty active partner
Very.
all through this process. And any other comments? Any other reactions? We have a following hearing at February.
February 12th will be
12th?
the second hearing, so at whatever time is appropriate, this evening, you could close this hearing, and we'll have the second hearing on February 12th.
All right. Everybody comfortable closing
Yep.
tonight?
I would move to close the public hearing on the adoption of the town plan as approved by the Planning Commission.
Mary moves, Colleen seconds. Any further discussion? Those of you approving, please signify by saying aye.
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 That includes Josh and Colleen, and those disapproving, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Dean. Thank you for thank all of you who came to spend time and listen to the procedure. We have another hearing again at our next meeting. The next item is an executive session pursuant to 1 Vermont Statutes annotated 313 to consider the negotiating or securing of real estate purchase or lease options, for which there will be, as usual, 2 motions.
But before we do that, Mr. Chair, can I do, you can call me out of order if you like, but I forgot to make a comment at the Select Board public comment time.
Please do.
I just wanted to remind folks about the Colleen Haig Award. And
Good idea, thanks.
Yes.
and I,
Mary, I'm sorry, can you say that again? The comment
yeah, I
about-
wanted to remind folks, Colleen, about the Colleen Haig Award. I think I saw one ad in the paper, and I just tried to email my nomination, and I guess my memory is wrong because it bounced. So I can't tell you what the email address is to email in your nomination. I thought it was Colleen hageaward@gmail.com.
I will
We can
double check
double
on
check.
that and let you know.
Yeah, and I
saw
couldn't
one-
find anything on the town website either. So I hope that the committee
check
will
with Jim.
do another announcement in the paper. And then I would like to see it announced on Front Porch Forum, which I'd be happy to do if somebody gives me the correct email
Yeah.
address.
I think Jim did one
Yeah.
Front Porch Forum post, but I agree.
Yeah.
We should all,
Because I think
Get the word out
February
on
it's
that.
coming up, yes?
yes.
So I'll make sure that I remember to bring it up again at our next meeting with the correct data.
Thanks,
Thank
Mary.
you.
That's a good point. Okay,
It's tagaward@gmail.com.
No. I'll try it again.
Did you get that?
I'll try it again. I thought I did that.
@gmail.com.
oh, it doesn't have the Colleen in front of it, does it?
Nope.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
I remember now, just H-A-A-G, yeah.
Everybody got that? Hageaward@gmail.com.
Hager Ward, yeah. Okay? Ready to
Yep,
make the first of the two motions?
I sure am. Let me see if I can get the language, because I don't think I have it on my annotated notes.
Should be there. We can borrow from last
I
week's.
don't have it.
Otherwise, it would be the same as last week's.
Yeah.
There we go, thank you. Alrighty, I would like to move to go into executive session by finding that premature public disclosure of negotiation of a real estate purchase or lease option would place the town at a substantial disadvantage, and that would be pursuant to 1 VSA Section 313. I have a second?
Second,
Seconded by Jamie, moved by Mary, to repeat, seconded by Jamie. Any discussion? Hearing none, those approving, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Josh votes aye, Colleen votes aye, and the second?
Move to go into executive session based on a finding that premature public disclosure of negotiations for securing a real estate purchase or lease option would place the town at a substantial disadvantage pursuant to 1 VSA Section 313. And I would like to invite the town manager, the finance director, and the town attorney via telephone to attend. Anybody else?
No.
May I have a second?
second.
Seconded by Jamie. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. It's unanimous.
Logistically, can I just ask, is there Mary or someone that I can FaceTime and use Wi-Fi while in executive session?
Yep.
In your office, is that
Okay.
possible?
Thank you.
We're asking Lee,
Should
Colleen.
be possible, yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Lee says okay.
we'll give it a shot.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
There's Dean.
Move to exit executive session.
Jamie
Second.
moves.
Second?
Mary seconds. To exit executive session and resume the general session. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Josh has voted aye, and Colleen
Dropped.
is now no longer attending. Ahead of the next item, number 11, which is the public hearing on the proposed town budget, we can state that we will continue to pursue discussion of a real estate purchase or lease to next Tuesday night, which is the absolute deadline for that decision. So for those of you who have been patient awaiting the outcome, in 1 week, that decision will have to be made. And we appreciate your continuing interest and attendance.
Did you want to make the appointments for purpose?
And consequent to as a part of that decision, we're going to make an appointment of two of us on behalf of the board to negotiate any agreement that relates to that potential real estate purchase or lease. And Jamie moves
Myself.
to,
We have to, so it would be myself and you as the designated representatives.
Mary seconds,
What,
So,
do we need a motion?
to formally designate, yes.
Okay, I will second that.
Any comment, Josh?
Yeah, fine.
No, and no more discussion. Those favoring, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Josh votes aye. No. Okay. Next item is the public hearing on the proposed town budget for fiscal year 2019-2020. This is a continuation from the prior meeting. Do we need to formally move?
Open a
to-
hearing.
I mean, no, you just did by announcing it's a
Okay.
continuation.
All right. You want to take the lead on?
So you have a copy of it. There are copies out there. The proposed budget at this time incorporates everything that we had talked about at the last meeting, where there was some additional revenue that was discovered, some suggested adds to the budget. It still keeps it at 4.98%, under your target maximum of 5%. We have no other late-breaking suggestions or changes at this time.
I thought it was 4.93% at this point. What changed since my packet?
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
my mistake. Thank you. 4.93.
Are there any comments, discussion, questions in the public?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, might as well, Gail. You know,
Can you just elaborate a little bit on the changes?
I'm sorry?
Can you just elaborate a little bit on the changes from last time?
Sure.
Sure. So there were several changes reviewed last week. One was that there additional revenue through dispatch agencies, excuse me, because certain agencies were added during this last fiscal year that had not actually been budgeted for because we didn't know they were coming in. So we're able to account for those. We're also proposing a little different approach to that. So it gives our dispatch contracted agencies certainty on their their own budgeting as well as the revenue that we'll receive, rather than it be, floating based on a call for service basis. Then several of the other changes included adding back in the overtime that had previously been suggested to be taken out from dispatch and from police department. There was a 3.5% add in for parity pay increases for the assistant clerks. And I think that, and then the adding back in $7,500 toward the non-lethal equipment for the police department. I
And
think
the
that
open space stayed at 35.
open space stayed at 35 as previously proposed and as a separate item on the warning. And Peter may have something else as well.
One other change that we did make since the last version was we did include the school resource officer in
Thank
the
you.
police budget. That's revenue neutral because the school district will be paying the full cost of that, but it seems close enough that it's going to happen, so we put it in this version. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Ken, any question? Anyone else?
Otherwise, we could continue the hearing to next week if that's your pleasure. And a motion to that effect would
So
be.
moved?
Moved by Mary,
Second.
seconded by Jamie. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
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 And Josh votes aye. And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
And then item 12, we would
Item
presumably
12.
table to next week as well.
Item 12, I thought
Yes.
we were done.
Yeah. We would,
Oh, yeah, we have
given
to.
the fact that we have one more item that, that pertains to the town warrant, we'll simply,
Could we just vote on that and then amend it if need be? The next, is that easier?
My suggestion would be to hold off, and if we're going to approve it, know exactly what the four corners of that warning will be and not approve it and change it.
Pieces.
yeah, I would think that would make some sense, Josh. We just hold off and do it all,
So
That's
either,
fine.
either way, we have to meet
yes.
Correct.
We would have a meeting next Tuesday
to
night
sign the warning.
for probably that purpose and that purpose alone at the moment.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks, everybody. I move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded, moved by Mary, seconded by Jamie to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Josh votes aye, and we thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Everybody.
Thank you, everyone.